Welcome to Break the Mould with Anwyn. I'm joined here today with Krista Bleich, and she is I'll let you describe yourself.
Hi, I am, wow, what am I? I live in the States, or
Yes. Whereabouts
yes,
do you live?
in the state of Wisconsin, which is in the Midwest, central part of the country. We have all four seasons here. It's just turning spring right now, so it's lovely
Nice.
to start to plant. Um, And I am small business owner, a coach, a mom, a knitter, a gardener, a hiker, an adventurer,
Yes.
um, and really embracing just living my life fully. So
Beautiful. And so you've studied NLP, and have you studied hypnotherapy
I have, yes,
with
NLP with
Evolve and
Evolve,
Relaunch?
yes. Mhm.
Like myself.
Yep.
And and so a little bit of background about you. How long is your journey with personal development been?
Oh boy, I think that started when I was um, like 16, really.
Mm,
Maybe started when I was like writing in my diary journal, praying to God, whatever or whoever God was, to take away all of the challenges and problems that I had. And then I remember finding there was back when they had magazine racks at we call them pharmacies or drugstores
oh yeah.
over here. Yeah. There was a paperback book, and I really don't even remember the name of it at this point. I remember being very intrigued by it was like a self-help type book, and I had never read anything like that before. And isn't it interesting
Mm,
that I was attracted to, instead of like a Teen Beat magazine or something,
yeah.
found in the little book section next to the magazine rack this, and I remember it was a white cover, and I think that's the book that kind of started me down the self-help track.
Mm.
And then one thing led to another. And do you remember um, Amandino, The Greatest Secret in the World? Do you
Oh
remember?
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes, and his series of books. I
yes.
remember reading that in college. And a really big one that hit me pretty hard when I was mid-20s was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, that
Yeah.
book.
I have
Um,
that.
yeah, yeah. And that topic I still use to this day, or that statement.
Yeah.
You never get to the point where um, you're not afraid.
No.
Um, yeah, you know that. Like there's
But you
always going to
can,
be some level, but
yeah.
still overcome it and just do it anyway.
Yeah, and you can like transform that energy of fear into sort of like adrenaline to get you going and doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever felt like maybe it's not fear, but it's just the excitement of doing
Yeah.
something new? And I've
Yeah.
just attached the word fear to it, but maybe it's just the excitement and like you said, the adrenaline.
Mm. Mm.
So um, yeah. So then one thing led to another. I remember there was even some kind of a recorded webinar that I listened to about leadership and management, and it was on Sunday morning, and it was summer and hot outside, and a lot of people were going to the beach or whatever, and I was in my apartment like watching this webinar on management and taking notes. And um, yeah, so now that you ask, like different memories are kind of flooding back in.
Mm. Mm.
So
And
it's
so,
been a long time.
yes. And so, when did you come to Evolve and Relaunch?
Well, that was just 2022. Wait, 2023. Yeah. So just
Okay.
6 months ago as of this recording. Um, uh, it was interesting because I was listening. I had signed up for another course with another company, completely unrelated, but it was health and wellness.
Yep.
Um, in Australia, and spent 6 months doing that program. And that woman had a podcast which featured another woman, and I listened to her interview, which I thought was phenomenal. So I started following her. She's also in Australia.
Yeah.
And then and then Evolve and Relaunch, Juliet and Paul were interviewed on her podcast, and I heard
Oh, wow.
that. And they offered a free 30-minute intro call or coaching call or something. And
Yes.
something about it really appealed to me. And I thought I really resonated with their message and what they were
Mm.
saying and their authenticity. And I thought, I'm just going to sign up for this 30-minute call. I'm not really sure why. And I was even kind of afraid to sign up for it because I'm like, I don't know why I'm signing up, but something's just
Yeah.
feels like it's the right thing to do.
Yep.
Uh, and that was in the end of October, and they had 2 upcoming courses to sign up for. And like I'd say 2 hours after I got off the phone, I decided, yeah, I'm going to sign up for this. And I signed up for the next class, which started like a week later. So
Mm.
um, yeah, and that started down the journey.
Yeah.
Then went right to therapy, and then went to Master Prac, and yeah.
Amazing. And so, had you heard of NLP before that?
No, I've
Okay.
never even heard of it. So,
Mm.
which is interesting out of all of the self-help stuff that is, I suppose at some point in time it may have passed through my lens, but I never really,
Mm.
grasped onto it at all. So it was completely new to me
Yeah.
when I started. But
Yeah. Well,
mm,
it's interesting. I hadn't really heard of it until I think about 2020.
okay.
Yeah, and then it started coming up all the time, and I thought I really have to go and do this, and so I asked someone who was a psychologist about it, and she recommended Evolve and Relaunch, and so
Okay.
yeah, so that's how it came about for me. But it's I just feel like it's really quite different to other forms of therapy, like I mean, yeah, I don't know all the others, but I think like for me, it seems like the modern version of CBT, um,
And I don't know what's,
cognitive
oh,
behavior
yes.
therapy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I think it has great results.
It definitely does. And the thing that I really enjoyed so much about the training, as you know, is everything that we learned, we had to experience ourselves and,
Exactly.
have that. So if I could feel it and know that it really transformed and changed me, I know that I can bring those kind of results to clients that I
Mm,
work with. So, yeah,
yeah,
great.
yeah. And so, with the work that you do, you work with women who are in their midlife.
Yes. Midlife women is, and midlife is a pretty loosely held term, because some people consider midlife, 40, 50, sometimes 60. It's really more, in, in most cases, it's when the women have had children and the children are to the point where they're much more self-sufficient. Usually after they've gotten their driver's license, they're not depending on you to take them anywhere. They're kind of off doing their own thing, either at that point or they have left the house and you're more of an empty nester. I had 4 kids, and then slowly over time, everybody, left. So it wasn't like a rude awakening if you have 1 or 2 and they leave within a short period of time. For some women, that is really hard because they've spent so much of their life taking kids everywhere, making lunches,
Yeah.
buying every year it's another shoe size. Depending on how many kids you had, there's a lot that goes into your time and energy raising kids,
So true.
and it becomes your identity in some regard, and then they leave, and um, it can be kind of daunting, like, who the heck am I now, and what do I want, and what's important to me?
Mm.
Being married or not, that same thing can happen to a lot of women, but that's typically who I do work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was a point when you changed your perspective with your marriage, and tell us a bit about that.
Well, let's see. I was married for 18 years. I got married late I guess I will go in just a little bit more of than just quickly answering the question. So there's some framework behind the story.
Yeah, of course.
Um, dated a lot in my 20s, was craving and looking for someone to love me. I was very shy, insecure, and thought if I could just find a husband, then everything would be fine, and would date pretty much anybody. I had no filter, and that was myself. That really showed a lot about my self-esteem.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was very depressed, and I
Mm.
had a therapist. And
Did your parents get you onto a therapist, or did you do that yourself?
oh no, I
This
did that
was,
myself. I was my mid-20s when I
oh, okay.
found for myself. Yeah. And had been on antidepressants, and
Mm.
just very isolated, really was not happy with anything, and was just dating to try to fill some kind of a void.
Okay, yeah.
Uh, and this therapist suggested that I would go to an inpatient treatment center, to just get away from everything,
Oh,
and take some time to. So that was incredibly scary.
yeah.
To, like, I mean, inpatient sounds pretty scary, but it was a
Mm.
treatment center, but you stay there, you don't leave.
Yeah.
And being, depressed,
Mm.
it was a very scary decision to make. But anyway, as I walked in the door to check into this place, there was a guy in the lobby as well. And I thought, God, that guy is really good looking. And then my next thought was, like, Krista, just stop it. You are, coming here for yourself. And, that's why you're here. Well, it turned out that that guy was in my program, and he was in the same treatment center and the same thing that I was.
Oh,
And that is the guy that turned out to be my husband. So,
right. Wow.
like, if you ever hear anybody say they meet somebody at an AA meeting, and you're just
Yeah.
newly sober, you probably shouldn't be with that person. Or if you just had a spouse that passes and you go to a grief support group, don't date somebody that you meet, because your spouse just passed away. Well, I did not take that advice, and
Right.
and started dating him while we were still in. I mean, you date somebody when you're in a treatment center, I don't know, but if the rules were, if you ever got caught with
Oh,
anybody in the
yeah.
program, you would get kicked out.
Oh,
So the
okay.
night, the night the next morning was 3 weeks, and I was being discharged, and he was too, and we both knew it. And I went into his room that evening before, and we got caught. Yeah.
Really? Oh my goodness. You're such a rule breaker.
So we like got kicked out of the treatment center, but the next day was the day we were both going home anyway. So
Right.
that's where the relationship started. Was I
Okay.
was when both of us were very depressed and went into this inpatient treatment center.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I mean, I definitely was happier because I had met this guy. Was that the best result from being in an inpatient treatment center for 3 weeks? I don't know, but that's what, yeah. And then things moved very fast, and I
Okay.
married him the end of that same year. So I'd known him for 11 months and got married.
Yeah.
So got married, moved, bought a house. And so everything really changed very, very quickly. At that same time, he started working 70 hours a week.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was in a new city by myself.
Oh, so you moved houses because
Moved.
you moved to where he was.
We bought a house in a completely different area because he got a new job.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
we both moved to a new area, knew no one. I didn't have a job. His company transferred him here to this place, and he
Right.
worked 70 hours a week. And he was a workaholic in very many ways.
Yeah.
So I was very isolated and lonely and got depressed again. So I went from very low to very high, got married, bought a house, like all the things were falling into place. And
Yeah.
then shortly thereafter, I was in the exact same spot I had been 18 months prior.
Yeah.
So, in retrospect, looking back, I probably made some poor choices and, jumped the gun. And even in as much as I knew about myself in my early 20s, with all the self-help stuff I did, I still, I knew what I knew at the time, and I did what I thought was the right thing. But so it didn't really start out very good, but we then had children. I thought that would make a difference. That became very chaotic, running, raising kids.
So he was still working 70
Still
hours.
work. Yeah, yeah, it was, and nights and weekends. So
Oh
we
my
just
goodness.
not
Yeah.
have really a relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very tough time. And I was not, early on in marriage, I didn't know if it was just the stress of having kids, or if it was the stress of, like his job, or is it just, this is the natural thing that happens in relationships? Like, it's hard
Yes.
and you put up with it. Or
So,
is this something like that's telling me like, this is not right? Yeah.
how long was it from getting married to having your first child?
7 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Not
Yeah.
straight away.
No, not straight away. I don't know how, he had a vasectomy, and
Oh,
so he
okay.
couldn't have kids.
Okay.
But he decided to have a reversal.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Okay.
yes.
And it worked.
And yes, and insurance doesn't pay for that.
Oh,
So I had this little side hustle, baking bread and cookies, and saved money for 2 years to,
gee.
I'd make $8,000
Making bread and
to,
cookies. That's amazing.
and I would sell at flea markets on the weekends,
Yeah.
and save that money to pay for that reversal surgery. So
Gee.
there was a lot of stuff that went on that took a little bit of time before
Yeah.
kids came. Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah.
Wow, that must have been an interesting journey.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, definitely was.
Yeah.
You know, when I had that little side hustle and I was baking and selling at flea markets, it gave me something to do.
Yeah.
And then I had a purpose, and I had a
Mm.
purpose because I was saving money for this
Yeah.
operation.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you had a
Then
restaurant
I ended up, then
later.
I ended up opening up that bakery into a full, that was in my house, the little side hustle thing. And then I ended up buying a building downtown and renovated it and turned it into a brick and mortar bakery. So
Wow.
by that time there was 4 kids
Mm.
and there was 14 employees, and that business,
Oh.
yeah.
And you
So
ran that completely on your own? You didn't have a
well,
partner?
and then I hired like a general manager and
Right.
a baker, because there's no way that I could do that without hiring people to help, you
Yeah.
know, at a bigger capacity.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
No, so it
So
sounds like it was pretty successful.
it was very
Mm.
stressful, very, very
Mm.
stressful. Yeah. Open 7 days a week. And
Well,
then then I
and you
almost
had
kind of,
4 children at a very young age, were they?
yeah.
And did you say you were homeschooling at the same time? Oh my God.
Yeah, they all worked down at, they came down, they didn't like work. I mean, they came down and you know, Annie, my daughter, she would run the cash register and she was
Yeah.
6. She, you know, would wait on customers, and the 2 boys
So
did
she's really
dishes.
good at maths.
Well, the cash register, she's good at training people and she's good at organizing.
She's a people person.
Yeah, and then she would decorate cookies.
Mm.
So, and the boys would do dishes, um, because my husband still worked at night.
Mm.
So he would have to sleep during the day, and then the kids would come down to the bakery during the day. But they were like learning stuff. They were around people, and
Mm.
that's
Mm.
kind of the way, you know, we had a back room that was like the office, and the kids would be back there. But then when he woke up, then the kids would go home, and then they would be with him.
Yep.
Um, he did a lot of fishing with them, so
Oh,
that was
that's
their
nice.
outdoor
Yeah.
education.
Yes. Yeah. Our kids have been through the restaurant years as well, like
Yes.
polishing cutlery and all
Yes.
sorts of things. Yeah. Which some of it uh, like they both sort of went into hospitality, but they're trying to get away from it a little bit now. But
It's
yeah,
a hard industry to be in.
very much. Yes. Yeah.
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 And then, you know, things with the marriage were not, you know, we just didn't see each other. Like we were on, he was
Mm.
nights, I was days, you know, there was always something going on with the kids. So then I was thinking that's more what's going on with the marriages. It's just, you know, it's just the stress of kids. We're not seeing each other. And I really wanted something to change. You know, I didn't know what, but if there was a way that he could be on first shift, but that really didn't help the schedule for the way the kids were and the way the bakery was being run. So it was really tough.
Yeah.
And our marriage really suffered. But I think it really didn't start out on the right foot,
Yeah.
because from what I know of good relationships is if there isn't a solid foundation, it's pretty dang hard to build on, you know,
Yeah.
sand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Did you
um,
have good examples of relationship with your parents, would you say?
uh, no, and that's interesting because my one grandma was very depressed. All
Okay.
that I can remember, she was depressed. She was always laying on the couch. Um, and you know, my grandpa would be like taking care of her. but she would be like yelling at him, and I was over there a lot. My other grandparents, that grandfather like yelled at my grandma all the time, and they just bickered all the time.
Yeah.
My mom and dad fought all the time.
Mhm.
They were divorced. So yeah, when you don't have really good role models, and I'm not blaming anything out at this
No.
point, just what I saw. So
Yeah, exactly.
the only role model was like the Love Boat on TV, or, like, some TV shows that you think like other people, they must have something.
Yeah.
And
Well, you think it's perfect, but yeah, behind
right.
closed doors, that wouldn't probably be good either.
Yeah. Yeah, so without those role models, I think the thing was, it was a very away from motivation. Like, I don't want to
Yes.
have a relationship like that, and I'm going to do
Yes.
everything I can to have, make sure I don't. But
Mm.
actually, what I was doing was recreating everything that I said I don't want
Interesting.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now I
Well,
see that, but
yeah. My mother was bipolar, um,
mm, that's
and
tough.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so, like, I think that depression is taking it inward, and
Yes.
so I probably did the opposite. I was angry and I would take it outward, whereas my
Uh,
sisters are probably more inward, and so they were a little bit more depressed. So I haven't had that experience of being depressed.
mm,
Yeah, because I took it outwardly. Yeah.
interesting.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
It does, it definitely alters your relationships, depression.
Yes.
Like with her, like it was, as a younger person, I was like, how much of it does she know? How much does she is she in control of this? Like, that's the questions
Mhm.
that you ask, like, why is it happening? And yeah.
Like, you were asking that of like what about your
Yeah.
mother, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Like cuz she was in, a lot of the time she was in like mental institutions where like
Mm,
she didn't really know what was going on. Um
yeah.
yeah, and
And
like with
so,
personal development, it's all about being responsible and choosing things and stuff, and you go, how much of
mhm.
this is she choosing? Like that's that fine
Yes.
line,
Yeah,
like
I get that.
of mental illness and
Yes.
yeah, and
Yeah.
personal development. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Well, and I saw that definitely with my one grandma that was like on the couch all the time. And, like, all I remember her was laying on the couch in her nightgown, and she really did not do anything. And she was just depressed. And,
Yeah.
back then they gave you a lot of psychotic medicine, and they didn't
Yeah.
know any better.
Yeah.
So I see that trickle down into my aunt and into my mom. And sometimes I wonder too, how much of this are they choosing, and how much of it is mental health that they can't get out of, on their
Yes.
own.
And if something had
A
been
tricky
done earlier
conversation.
too, like with
Yes.
my mother, like she basically just bunny hopped from GP just to get more drugs. She actually
Mm.
loved the drugs. She loved the
Oh, sure. So she thought she was doing just fine, really.
yeah, so she
Yeah.
just, yeah, she I don't know, it's kind of rotting the system, but the doctor was happy to just give her drugs rather than say, well, why don't you go and talk about this with somebody
Yeah.
instead. That was like this quick fix, or just take these, you'll feel
Sure.
better. Yeah, and there's that
Well,
whole
that was a
thing
different era
in the
when our
50s. Yeah,
mothers.
yeah,
But now, like 30 years later, there was a lot of red flags that maybe I should have paid attention to. And
of
um,
course. Yeah,
maybe I shouldn't have even gotten married, but I was craving being married, and that was all I wanted. And I was 28, and I met him, and then But that's kind of the truth. Like I'm not in a except I'm in a relationship with myself in some
Well,
regard,
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But
yeah,
there's
I think,
lessons that you learnt along the way too.
oh yeah, in my marriage about myself.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It really taught me about, just myself and what's important to me. Naive. I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I grew up like that, then that actually, influenced me. But of course, we all know at this point, everything that we were exposed to, we were modeled. And now I can look at it through a different lens and make different choices. Um, and
Mm.
I'm grateful to be where I'm at right now and all of the things that I went through and the different things that I've learned about myself. Because even though as hard as my marriage was and raising kids and running business, there's so many things that have shaped me into who I am now, that if I wouldn't have had those experiences, I wouldn't be who I am now. So was it good or bad? I don't think there really is a label. It just
No.
was. And
Yeah.
here I am today as a result of all of that experiences, and
Mm.
grateful for it. But at the time, it really was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've done some training recently. We were talking about the chakra points, like
Mm-hmm.
there's the ages of the chakra points. So 14 to 21 is the solar plexus, and I was
Uh-huh.
looking at that, and that's actually the time when my mum, became mentally ill, and
Uh,
so that's where my body holds it. Yeah, like the ailments are held there, yeah, from that time because it wasn't properly resolved, I think.
uh-huh. Have you done
Mm.
some things to try to alleviate that
I
then
will
in
be,
that?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I just had this discovery, yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
which is really interesting, yeah. Because
yeah.
like if you think about it, like those 7 year cycles, there's always
Mm-hmm.
something significant that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's even like themes in different in the cycles of the years, 0 through 7. I think of my cycles or my themes in more of decades. Like, what was the theme, of my
Oh yeah.
teenage years? The theme of my 20s, and each one has this different theme to it. I think if you look back on things in your life, you can kind of see where there's been patterns of certain, if it was 5, 10, or 10 years, and then usually it's correlated with um, a job or children or marriage, because that shapes how you spend your time in those certain areas when the kids are littler versus when they're teenagers versus when you first get married versus when you've been married for many years. So
Mm.
anyway,
And so
side note.
what what attracted you, like what qualities attracted you to your husband originally?
Is probably that probably something that would be more of a red flag now.
Right.
Like, yeah, just um uh, he's served, like, filled this hole, and
Mm.
I wanted it to be filled. And he just loved me and nurtured me, and um I feel like I was craving that for a really long time.
Hmm.
And that's what I was searching for. And ironically enough, because I was craving it so much and searching for it, I actually attracted it to me, but in an unhealthy way.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
To be
So,
cared for and nurtured.
yeah. But then
Mm.
it stopped,
Oh,
you
yes.
know,
Okay.
because
And
then he
so
started
there was
learning.
lots of attention when you met, but then
Yes.
that disappeared. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And then
Mm.
I think it was more disappointing when all of a sudden it was gone. Cause like, what did I do wrong? And why is he
Aha,
like
yes.
work over me? Um, yeah, there was a lot more self, um, not hatred, but just like, what did I do wrong? because all of a sudden he turned to work.
Yes.
Because he didn't drink, but I think many times people use gambling,
Yeah, true.
whatever, work. You can use a lot of
Some
different
vice.
things. Addicted to.
Yeah, yeah. People are
Yeah.
addicted to work.
Yes. Yeah.
And so then, so what would be your values now in relationships?
Mm.
What's important to you in a relationship?
Well, at this point, I'm become very independent and self-sufficient, and I know who I am and what's important to me and what I want and what my values are, where I didn't know any of that before.
Yeah.
So, um, I think probably the biggest thing is just partnership.
Yep.
Sharing a life and be in partnership with not necessarily a spouse. I don't know if I want to get married again, but
No.
maybe, but in relationship is, equal, and maybe not necessarily equal, but supportive partnership.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to change who I am and all of the things that I do and fills my soul. And I wouldn't expect somebody else to, change who they are either. But if we
Yeah.
can be mutually supportive of one another's growth, and be there with each other, that feels more of an ideal. And I'm not in a relationship, so this is all hypothetical. I'm
Of
looking,
course.
but
Well, you never know what's around the corner.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And so being supportive is really important. And that's kind of that whole thing of that's filling the void that you didn't have too, really, isn't it?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And anything else that's important in a relationship?
At this stage, it's for me, that the person has something that they're striving to become and
Okay.
grow.
Yep.
It's not like, okay,
Some
I'm at,
purpose.
something that there's something bigger than themselves that
Yep.
they want to be yet, because growth doesn't stop just because you're, after 60 and
Yeah.
theoretically retiring and, maybe just golfing now. Like, you got a lot more left to live, and you
Yeah.
should, making judgments, I know that, but use that
Yes.
wisdom and for the greater
Exactly.
good of not just your family, but other people can benefit from the wisdom that people in their
Mm.
late 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s have. Like,
Mm.
my dad is 84. No, he just turned 85, and he still works 3 days a week,
Yeah.
you know, and it gives him a sense of purpose. He loves
Yeah.
it. He also goes to the theater. He works in his yard. Um, like, you don't stop living and having a purpose, whatever that is. So
Yes. And
17.
and so would you say part of that is like you're constantly changing, and with your work, with your clients, it's all about facing those fears, making the change for
Yeah, and not to be complacent, because it's easy to be complacent, and sometimes you need something to push you or pull you into it that wants to be expressed through you. And you have to be up, like, not to cower to the challenge of doing something more with your life yet, because it's easy. I think that's the easy road. I was just thinking today, like, I work out pretty regularly, and there's
yeah.
some fitness classes that I go to that they're really challenging.
Yes.
But I realize I have this, like, wow, I just did that. I
Yeah.
didn't know could do it until I was challenged and,
Yes.
kind of to do it. Now, I could use fitness as an analogy, but you could use anything. If you don't grow unless you're challenged to grow. So find the thing that maybe pushes you to make you grow, because if you don't, you're going to be stagnant, and then that's, I don't know. I think that's, again, that's a judgment, but
Yeah, and it changes with your attitude. I do yoga and we do
yeah,
it's PT, so it's like we all have a little
sure.
program that we do differently. And mine was all written out messily, and so I went there with it written out really well. I'd rewritten it, and I was so focused. It was really,
Yes.
yeah, so it became quite powerful, and I walked out of there like I really like pushed myself as well and felt really strong. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether, yeah, I think it, when when something pushes you beyond what you thought you were capable of doing and you're able to do it,
Mm.
it's very self-fulfilling. And then in my case, makes me want to do the next thing. Because if
Yes.
I could do that, like what else could I possibly do? Or what could I
Mm.
possibly be? Or who else could I possibly serve if I could do that? So that's propelled. So back to the original question about what else would I look for in a relationship? Somebody else that has some desire to
Drive.
become
Mm.
something more
Mm.
within themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're always looking for that possibility or
Yes.
potential.
Yes. Yeah. In
Mm.
fact, that's one of my is tuning into possibility and potential is one of my signature programs that programs that I offer. It's
Mm.
just a package that I have that's it's still tied to NLP and hypno, but it's one of my own programs that I offer, and I use everything that I learned in NLP as a
It complements it.
basis.
Mm.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. I enjoy it, and I think it's because anything that any one of us want in life, it doesn't necessarily happen overnight.
No.
And it's all the steps and the seeds you plant and the different things that you do, over the course of time. And then all of a sudden, it seems like all of a sudden it manifests, but it didn't
Yes.
just manifest then. It was manifesting all along the way. It just became into reality,
Mm.
at a certain point. It's just like, oh, it just all of a sudden happened. Well, it was, 2 years or 2 months in the making.
And it also becomes clearer in your mind too, like it does for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
now you know what you don't want, and you work towards getting clearer and clearer. And yeah, that's
Have you
more
ever had the
powerful.
experience of having something that you wanted and then kind of started heading down that path to, achieve that, but then something else, like, okay, that just didn't quite work out, and I thought it was going to work out that way, and being willing to let go of what you
Yeah,
thought was supposed to happen, and
and
then
adapt. Mm.
yeah, and then what ends up happening is even bigger than what you had thought.
Better. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. So
Yeah.
hold on to the dreams, but hold on to them pretty loosely and be open to the possibility that wants to tell you what it wants from you to be
Mm.
shown through you.
Yes.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, all kinds of stories of things that I could talk about.
So, would you say, with that story of how you met your partner, would you say that you are a bit of a risk taker?
I never thought about that before, but I suppose I am. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Do you like that quality of yourself? Like, you're a
I
bit
do
of
actually.
a rule
Yeah.
breaker?
Yeah. I mean, I think about things for quite a while before in some cases I don't have the time to think, so I have to trust myself. In some cases I do have the time to think things through, but I am more of a risk taker. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I started a business. I homeschooled
Mm.
my kids.
Yeah.
Um, I have done other numerous things. Even like when I was selling bakery out of my back, kitchen and selling at flea markets, that was just, that was a risk. I didn't know if people were going to buy.
Yeah, true.
Um,
That paid
yeah,
off, a risk that paid off.
yeah. I think,
Mm.
and even if risks didn't necessarily pay off, I learned something, and
Yes.
then used that lesson to teach me about what I could do differently the next time. So
Mm. Mm.
yeah, yeah, I do enjoy trying different things, and I don't sit still for too long.
And is there something that you could give the listeners to do with your reawakening, or the the programs
Um,
that you are doing?
yeah, I would just say that every step along the journey that I've had, has been necessary. And
Mm.
even though I might not have liked it in the moment, it was always teaching me something, or I was gaining something from it, that was leading me to the next step. So, I mean, you hear that a lot, just trust the process. And it's hard to, until you look back and you can see that everything that happened for a reason and on purpose. And I actually, at this point, really did create those things for my own growth. And a lot of people don't have um, that thought process, that they really do create their own reality. And we
Yeah.
are really mirrors and reflections of ourselves in other people and situations. And so many things have happened over the years now that I really 100% believe that, we do have so much more power than we realize that we do to create. And once you can own that,
Mm.
things really start to change and move pretty quickly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the owning it, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. And
Like
that's just
we've been
definitely,
learning.
yes, taking more risks. As you know, I've just recently uh, taken another leap, but it feels like the exact right time to do that. And it
Yes.
wasn't, again, it wasn't one of those things that just happened. I've
Mm.
been preparing for it for months. And so when
Yes.
I actually took this leap, it wasn't like it just happened. It was all the things that I've been doing up until now.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
It's a calculated risk.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And is
mm.
there anything else you'd like to talk about as far as relationships go?
Oh boy. Yeah, and I think really at this point, the biggest relationship that I am in is with myself,
Yes.
trusting myself, loving myself. And it's more than, like love yourself and, go get a massage or, take
Yeah,
care of yourself kind of thing. It's more like I really honor who I am and what I am
absolutely.
doing. Because sure, I can go take a bath or I can go get a massage. Like that's self-care. Like that's just self-care.
Yeah.
Loving yourself is like all of you, like
Mm.
the parts that are quote unquote bad or that you think are
Yeah.
bad or whatever. It's just a real acceptance, more
Yeah.
acceptance.
And
You can have a,
I thought when you said that, I was thinking, you know how the people say you should have gratitude for other people and stuff. It's like you should have gratitude for yourself,
self.
like for
Yes.
your achievements and what you've done. Like, yeah,
Yeah, having
it's
gratitude.
yeah. And so, like, you probably have a really good relationship with your children.
Mhm.
Mm. And
Yeah. True.
And so they would have learnt something from all of these years. Like the fact that you are now taking that responsibility and you've got a new perspective on it, then they would benefit from that too.
Well, and I think they see the difference between, and like that was one thing that I really had a hard time with when I got divorced was,
Mm.
split up for the kids. And
Yeah.
how they were, but that too, that's impacted their life in they see the perspective of the way I live, and they see the perspective the way that he lives. Not good or bad, but they see two different perspectives, and they can make their own determination based off of what they see. But and over the years, I've had to learn how to, navigate being a parent to, younger children. And I'm really grateful for what I've created in a relationship with all of them now
Yeah.
at this age. So
Yeah.
it's,
And to leave is to have respect for yourself too, because you are honoring yourself and
yes,
your needs
yeah,
and desires that weren't being fulfilled. So,
yeah. Although they really did not like me at that point, because they thought
okay.
that I, really hurt him. But they only had their limited perspective as a child at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, if there's anything, like you had said, just anything to, tell any listener, it's more than just take care of yourself. I mean, yes, that's important, but self-acceptance, and definitely gratitude for everything, because it's teaching you something about
Yeah.
yourself, and
There's a
embrace
lesson
it
in it.
all. Yeah.
And one of
Well,
the presuppositions in NLP is that everybody is doing the best they can with the resources that they
yes,
have. And
yeah,
and I think about my parents like that too, like they were struggling as well, like they were just doing the best they could.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and I think they did a great job. And there's
yeah.
some qualities that I've got from both of them.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I definitely have some from both my parents as well, and it's nice to be able to own that.
Yes.
As there's been trying times with my mother, in my relationship, but I've learned to own the things that I have that I wouldn't. I know how to cook. I, run a really good household. I bake, I knit, I sew. Mom taught me how to do all of that.
Well,
Um, and we had to do the dishes every night, and we had to sweep the floor every night. And like, I hated it, but we all, my sisters and I all have, really care for our house and take good care of our houses because we were taught that. So there's
yeah.
things that we learn that are life lessons
Yeah.
too, from those moms of the 50s.
And I think, it's good to embrace the negative qualities too, as we know with shadow work.
Yes.
That, yeah, those things that we instantly repel are really interesting to dissect and look at and find out why we think that they're so, bad or something, and integrate that into our lives and accept
Yeah.
that we are all of those qualities. Like, as our personality is full spectrum, there's no
Yes. Yes.
denying.
Right. And when you can see that, definitely through shadow work. And if anybody has never done any shadow work or really have, there might be some superficial shadow work that people have done, but anything through a coach that's been trained with Evolve and Relaunch, there's so much more that we know how to
Yeah.
uh, do shadow work or values work. Even values work, I think, is
Yes.
huge. Um, so many times it's been just take a list of, 100
Scratch the
top.
surface.
Yes, yeah, and it's much more in depth. And there's so much more to doing values work with a coach that's been trained with Evolve and Relaunch. So
Yes.
go
Yes.
off on a tangent about that, but
Well, they produced two very competent coaches such as ourselves. Yeah.
it's been lovely to chat with you, Anwyn.
Yes. So, and how can people reach you? You've got a website?
Yes, I do. In fact, I just rebranded my website
Mm.
after 6 months of training with Evolve and Relaunch. Like I've changed so much that
Wow.
I realized yeah. So I just it's probably going to be like, well, by the time this gets aired, it will be up and running, and it's just my
Amazing.
name. Yeah, just KristaBleich.com. So yeah,
Beautiful.
and I'm on
Fantastic.
Instagram, Facebook, just like
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. And so what's your handle on those? Instagram, just
And
your
just
name,
Krista
is it?
Bleich. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Uh,
so much for today, Krista.
yeah.
It's been an absolute joy
Thank you. I
learning
really
more
enjoyed.
about you.
Yeah, you too. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to continuing our new friendship that we've forged since we've met this last couple of
Yes.
months. And we've got more another project coming up for the next 6 months. So we'll be
Yeah.
seeing a lot of.
Be cool.